do this. Hey folks, welcome back. A week off. Jennifer over there on your right, Natalie Dupuis
Hi.
on your left. Natalie has got some fun stuff for us tonight. It's going to be great. So welcome back everybody. Thanks for your participation in the 500th show. That was fun to do. If you've missed it, please go back and watch that, but have pen and paper ready because we will enable you to spend your money for 2+ hours. Yeah, we did a lot of that. So Natalie tonight is going to, really excited to get to this, Natalie is going to take us through the design process for a new design she's working on from scratch, inspiration, all the way to, she's actually started to stitch. So a fun thing, just setting up the pictures was riveting. So that'll be coming up here just shortly. Next week, Gayanne Rogers will be with us to get started. I think that's next week. Is that right? 8? No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Gayanne Rogers, to get our new project with her started. Sunday will be Brandy from Be Stitch With Me. She's starting up a new shop, but she also dyes threads and linen. And so going to be an interesting conversation with her. That is Sunday. And then I remind you again and again and again, the workshop that Kim at Sassy Jack's has coming up August 5 and 6, Dance of the Wildflowers with Beth Seal of Summer House Stitch Works. There was, there's Kim there. Kim, if you're sold out, say so. Otherwise, there are openings. Call Kim at the shop and get in on that. August 5 and 6, Beth Seal, Summer House Stitch Works, Dance of the Wildflowers, a live workshop. You travel actually to Kim's place and participate. So yay for that. Now, a couple of other announcements that we have that I just need to remind people. When we did our 500th show, Kim and Allie put together this design. WeTalkFiber.com's Fiber Talk Friends. And if you, Kim still has spots. You can see that in the thing. So sign up for that August 5 and 6 with Beth Seal. Kim and Allie designed this little design for our 500th show. And you can download that for free. There's no charge. Right up here at the top row, WeTalkFiber.com/friends. Download that PDF. Excuse me, if you stitch that and then send a photo to Kim at Sassy Jack's, then she will make up a scissor fob for you with your picture in the scissor fob and send it back to you. No charge for that. Very kind of Kim. So it's a fun thing to do, and then you get a scissor fob out of it. So check that out. It's right at the top of the picture there, WeTalkFiber.com/friends, and you download that thing for free. So do check that out. And then the other thing, Beth and I, we just posted it today. Beth and I, we're going to be doing more of these videos, shorter videos. So we did an unboxing with Debbie Hodge Stitched Stories. May 21 was the show we did with Debbie, and she was kind enough to send us each a kit. And so we did an unboxing so you could see what the kits are from Stitched Stories. And so that's, you can see that, WeTalkFiber.com/Stitched Stories. And those are the two that we did. That's the one I'm doing. So check out those videos, and we'll be doing other short videos coming up. Got to do some with Jennifer too. Got to get Jennifer in on this. So in addition to our shows, we just want to try some of these other things. So so that is that's something to watch too. It's just a 15-minute thing. It's a quick thing. So check that out. Now let's see, what else do we have? All right, so we have drawings tonight. Everyone who won in the 500th show, you should either have your stuff or it's on the way. Sharon Bruce in Ireland ended up with COVID. Actually, during the show is when she was feeling sick and ended up with COVID. But she wrote to the people that she had to send to and let them know that it might be delayed a little bit. But you should all have, if you won, you should have it everybody should be caught up. So on that. So thanks for that. Now the drawings tonight, I'll show you what we have. Here, I'm just gonna, you guys are gonna go away here. Just gonna be me. Okay. I'm gonna show you what we have. So we have two things like we've done before. So for those who are new, to do the drawing, it is just for people who participate in the live show. And you have to send an email during the show, anytime during the show. You send it, it's down here at the bottom. Gary at WeTalkFiber.com is where you send it. And in the subject line, I'll tell you about that in a second, then in the main body, you put your name and address, and then I do the drawings right after the show so that we have the winners. So it's just for people who participate in the live show, you get a chance to win. Now, what we're giving away tonight, and we'll be giving away quite a few of in the coming weeks, I had a huge contribution from a friend in Illinois some time ago. She's a needle pointer, of a whole ton of rainbow gallery threads and a bunch of kits and counted canvas charts. And it's just been sitting here because it's going to take some time to go through it. So last week, Marga and I sat down and we went through and we sorted everything out and got it organized. So now we have a bunch of needlepoint oriented things to give away and a bunch of thread along with our other things. So tonight what we have, the threads that we have are all rainbow gallery. So Marga put together in just little Ziploc bags half dozen or so skeins of different kinds of threads. So here's Overture, which is a 4-ply cotton, over-dyed. And so we've got a couple of those tonight, different colors. And this is pure stash building thread, something to play with, is all this is. And then she put together a bunch of flare, which can be your nemesis or a real nice enhancement to a design. So, and there's some others in here too, like flare and frosty rays there in the back. And here's just a bunch of flare. So, so that's one giveaway for 4 winners. So for that, you use the subject rainbow. Okay? So you just put in the subject line, you put the word rainbow, nothing else, then that goes to a place and then I do the drawing. Make sure you include your name and address. All right? So you can enter that one, you can enter the needlepoint one, you can enter both. It's up to you, I don't care. Just please only enter once for each one and be careful with that subject line so that you get to the right spot. So then we have 4 needlepoint counted canvas kits to give away. Laura Perrin, Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, I like that one.
It's a beautiful one. And these are all full kits, but now my friend, I can't guarantee that every thread is in here, but I think for the most part they are. And I did not take them apart and count them all, but this is beautiful. Now I will give you a heads up on Laura Perrin things. They're all very symmetrical, very geometric, but watch out for errors. Just pay attention as you're stitching. If something seems off, double check yourself so you don't get halfway through and discover you're out of whack. And Laura does not put corrections on her website and does not acknowledge the errors that I've ever seen. So just be careful there as you're stitching. But everything is symmetrical, and of course her designs are just gorgeous. I mean, I think that's just beautiful, beautiful work. So that's one, Wheel of Fortune from Laura Perrin. And then some of you who have been around a long time will remember the Nordic Needle, which was a business. I think they're still in business doing online stuff, but they had a huge store that was a destination. Well, some time ago, January in 2011, they had a monthly series called the Counted Canvas Snowflake Club. And so my friend bought all of these and the kits and everything. So they're 8x8, this is an 8x8 18 count canvas. And so here's one. So there's 3 of these tonight in addition to the Laura Perrin. A Dozen Roses is one. That's the January. Then we have June. Why it's June and not July, I don't know, but June, Independence. Kind of a fireworks design. And yeah, oh, these are nice charts. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You won't have any trouble with that chart. That's a good chart. So, so that one, and then now this one did not have the threads with it. So let's see, Pearl Cotton, Threadworks, Krynic, Mill Hill Beads, Karen Collection, Watercolors, Edmar Lola. Not sure what that is. But anyway, there's no kit for this, but it's called Candy Cane Christmas. But you can figure your own thing out. And
I
if
think
you
the Edmar is like a rayon. They use it in that Brazilian embroidery. That
oh, is it?
the stitching shop in Denver has tons of it because they do that Brazilian embroidery. They have a club.
There we go. Okay, so if you need Edmar
So
Lola, there you go. So that's not a kit. And then the last one tonight, there's enough thread in here for 14 projects. This is called Sweet Treats.
cute.
And you can see how they show finishing on that.
Is that Easter because it's got rabbits?
It's March, so yeah, it must be March.
Spring.
Yeah, spring
Easter.
kind of thing. So
Maybe
all right.
they sent stuff out a month early.
That
So
would
like
make sense.
March, and then like the June is the Independence Day for July.
See, there
Maybe
you go,
that's what's
Jennifer. You
happening.
figured it out. Yep, you're probably right.
Maybe.
They were thinking ahead, thinking ahead. So that's the deal. Now I'm going to take this sign down because it'll be in the way of what Natalie's going to show us. But send your emails, Gary@WeTalkFiber.com. Do it before the end of the show because I do the drawing right afterwards. Rainbow gets you in the drawing for the Rainbow Thread Gallery thread packs. And then Needlepoint gets you in the drawing for one of the 4 kits, 3 kits and 1 chart. You can do both, one or the other, doesn't matter to me. Just enter once in each one, please. Don't duplicate on us, and make sure you get the subject line. But remember, you have to have 2. Don't put in Rainbow and Needlepoint and expect to be in both, because basically what happens then is you go to my main inbox and you're lost forever. So you got to do 2 if you want to be in both of them. You got to do 2 emails. So do that. I'm going to take that down in a minute. So that's all I got. That's enough. All right, Natalie, I'm going to put you guys back on the screen now. All right, so we've got, oh, this is going to be so much fun. It really is. All right, I think what we're just going to do is we're just going to put you on the screen here, Natalie, and I'm going to say go, and you tell me when to go to the pictures.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
Is that my go?
That's your go. Make it happen.
Okay. So what I thought could be fun to talk about tonight was the new design that I'm working on and the steps that not always in this order, but I often go through these steps that I'll discuss with you. And every designer is going to have their process that they like to work through. But maybe some of you will pick up a few ideas for when you're trying to take on your own new design yourself. So first we should talk about what is the design and why am I doing a new design? So I'm working with the Crewel Work Company, and they asked me, I'm going to say back in March, if I could do something in Ornue for them. So we'll say March or April. And Ornue is the area that I'm proficient in, is my area of interest. So I said, sure, no problem. I can do that. So their theme for their festivals next year is castles and country houses. So I started to look around at some castles and country houses in the UK to see if I could find some inspiration on a motif that was, perhaps on a banner or, on a fence of one of these homes. And I came up with a few ideas, and they said, nice, but not quite what we're looking for. So then they showed me some pictures of a variety of artifacts inside the homes that the Crewel Work Company has access to. And they said, well, do any of these strike you to be done in Ornue? And they showed me 3 or 4. And right after I saw the first one, I knew that was going to be the one. I didn't even need to see number 2, 3, or 4, but I let them chit chat. And I said, okay, let's go back to those birds. I think those birds could be really interesting in the technique of ornue. So now you can show maybe just the birds, and then I'll talk about
Okay.
where they came
All
from.
right. I've
Those
got the
birds.
book. What do you want?
So not those birds, the birds of the design. But you're right, those are birds too. Yeah, that one. Okay. So they show me, this is the picture that I said, oh yeah, I could see that being done in ornue. And the black didn't bother me at all. Like right away I saw that and my brain started churning. I know that there's black twist and black passing. Typically in ornue you would use gilt or silver passing thread in a pair, but I knew that there are some alternative colors as well. I said, oh, well, that's just going to for sure be done with black passing thread. Otherwise, the students are going to like lose their mind trying to make a black background. But later on, I thought, well, they don't have to do the black background black. They could do it in another color. But anyway, so where is that picture? That's from a country home in England. I forget the name of the place. But it's what it is it's birds that have been done in the technique of pietra dure. And this is an Italian precious, semi-precious stone inlay technique that was, has been popular for hundreds of years, quite well known in Italy, in particular from Florence. So those are very thin slices of a variety of colors of rocks, and you can make pictures out of them if you're, if you're skilled in that technique. So I thought, oh, how neat it would be to take that and use those colors, generally speaking, and try and make something of that in ornue. I have no idea what the dimensions of that piece are right now, but it doesn't matter because I'm going with my own dimensions, as I'm going to explain in a bit. So, by the end of our meeting, I said, yeah, sure, I can give this one a go, no problem. But during the meeting, I said to Philippa, I said, well, do we have to do the insects? Because maybe they're just going to look like colorful blobs. Then she kind of laughed. She said, well, if you don't put in insects, what are the birds actually chasing? And I said, okay, you're right. I'll have to put an insect in there somehow. And I'll come back to that in a bit. And then I also wondered about the angle and, can I crop it? Can I have some of the tails cropped off or not? So this was all the thinking that I started to do shortly after the discussion. So we got off the phone, and then right away that week, I thought I need to learn about what are those kinds of stones and why do they make those colors? So a lot of times my design work starts with some sort of research. Like someone who's writing a book, they'll often go on research trips. And I don't get to do exciting research trips very often, but I do get to do exciting research trips to the library and pulling from my network. So I found a couple of friends who were connected with people who know a lot about rocks, not me. I don't know much about rocks and stonework, but I'm learning because of this design. So a couple of different geologists, and I cross-referenced what they were saying about the stone types with each other, and we came to an agreement of what are the different stones in there. And then I thought, well, I need to talk to a birder as well, someone who knows about birds, because what kind of birds are those? Are those fictional birds? Are they just fantastical? And after some discussion, we decided that it's a fictionalized version of a finch, the Lady Guldian finch bird. They're a very, very colorful bird with this kind of beak. And okay, that's fun to go with. Never got down. I still was on the fence about the insects, so I never looked too deeply into what kind of insects those
I'm
were.
struggling. I'm struggling with the insects with finches because they're seed eaters. So.
Well, I did research. They do eat insects as well.
Oh, they do. Okay. All right.
They do. They eat both, but they prefer seeds. But that's okay as long as they still eat some kind of insects, then it works, right?
Okay. Yep.
So I did those two things, and I made my notes, and I got out my son has a little rock collection with labels, but the rock collection comes from Brazil. I'm like, ooh, the names of the rocks are in Portuguese. So I had to contact a friend to help me translate the names of the rocks. They're actually fairly similar to the names you might recognize. Um, agata and jasp with an E and no R, and, quartz and that kind of thing. So I don't know if I have a picture of that, Gary. I think there was one in the album of the different labels of the types of rock, if anybody's interested in that. Was there one in there?
Well,
Yeah, um, it's, I think, after the one you were
right
showing.
here.
Yeah, that one. So you can see there. I'm just trying to figure out, for anybody who's a geologist out there, feel free to add in your 2 cents. And it was quite like beautiful to see that, this rock and this rock are probably the same on the breasts of the birds, but you can see that there's, some more warmth in areas of the rock than other areas of the rock, or stone. My geologist friend said I should say stone and not rock. And then I had
Okay,
to ask what
I
the
got
difference.
I got to back you up, Natalie. So long ago when these were made, somebody had the
Hmm.
technical ability to take these different types of stone and cut
Yeah,
really thin slivers and and then
yeah,
make shapes and piece
yeah,
them together to make a bird.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's actually some very interesting videos on YouTube that I've bookmarked for my students to show that process. And if you go back to the very first picture in your album, Gary, you can see um, the cover of a book that I purchased to teach myself a little bit more about this. So, it's stone inlay, and all those butterflies there and the tulips, they're done with these very thin slivers of colored rock,
Holy
stone.
smokes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, look at the moth. That's a perfect stone that they've chosen there, isn't it? So
Wow.
this was very fashionable, for young men to go on their grand tour of, on the continent, and come back with examples of this pietre dure. You can go ahead and scroll through. Those were just some others in that book. In this book, there are lots of birds with black background, and I just included a few so you can see the variety of shapes, and the great skill.
Now are these translucent? I mean, like, are we talking stained glass thin
No,
or
no.
just
Imagine a tabletop,
oh,
or
okay.
these were often used for tabletops or panels in a sort of a casket. That one's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And
Wow.
that's just half of it. You can see where the crease beside the
Yeah.
owl is.
Overachiever.
Yeah.
Yeah, who did that one?
But still, I
Wow.
can imagine when the light comes in, because it still has some depth and stuff. So even if you can't see through it, the stone will still take the light and shift
Yeah,
it.
and I think there's some that are, some have some reflective qualities to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have lots of like little rocks and crystals and stones, and they're solid, but they're really
Yeah.
pretty, and in different light they do different things. So I can imagine.
So this
Well,
is
I
their
mean, it's
thread.
not uncommon for embroidery designs to be pulled from these type of stone panels, these
Oh,
artistic
really?
stone panels, and you will find lots of them still around. Um, so that's kind of neat to start spotting when now next time you go to a museum or an art gallery, and
Yeah.
just have a bit of understanding and appreciation of these lovely, like, look at that purpley blue, that indigo with the orange and the green around it. It's just amazing.
Hmm.
So I can see why Philippa at the Crewwork Company would have had a photo of this, showing pieces that were in one of the homes that she has connections with, because it's such an interesting piece, right? The technique itself, and then now to translate it into Ornue, that's going to be fun.
Wow. All right, so what
Right. So
makes
then
you,
here,
all right, so, just taking these all as examples, what makes
yeah.
you land on this one?
Well, I didn't see the other ones. Those ones are from the book that I purchased after
Oh,
I agreed to
Oh.
do these birds. I said, okay, but just want a bit more background, because when I teach something, I want to be able to tell my students a bit about, the where this piece came from, how was it made, and now I'm translating that into needlework. It's just nice to know.
yeah.
There's that teacher side of me that wants to know just a bit about the source.
So when you, unfair question, but when you got the book, did you wish you had had one of these to do?
No, no, I'm really pleased with this one. I
Okay.
think this is beautiful.
Okay.
There's something very kind of cute, kind of whimsical about it. It's a really lovely piece. And so, this design, just like embroidery designs, this design might have gone around to many workshops, and many workshops might have taken the line drawing and made reproductions of it, just like we see, sometime in embroidery cartoons and design books. They get passed around and you do your own thing with them. How you might interpret which color of stone to put where.
Yeah.
But I've tried to stick, when I've been choosing my thread colors, I've tried to stick fairly close to what I see here. But, not exact.
Right.
I thought, and in Ornue, actually, as a design, I think color-wise, this will be fairly easy for the students, because it's pretty like blocks of color, right? They're not having to be a very super skilled at shading to get depth here. They just can play with the blocks of color.
Mm-hmm.
So after doing a little bit of research on what type of birds are they, what type of rocks and stones are in there, and a little bit thinking about the colors and looking at my son's stone collection, I said, okay, so now I need to make a color picture of this. Because when I have, you can maybe go, there we go. Thank you. I find for me to really put my heart into something, I need to fall in love with it. I know I'm going to spend a few hundred hours stitching this, and I want to fall in love with the piece. So a lot of times I'll pull out my watercolors and I'll just make copies. I'll do 3-4 versions of this. And that helps me develop a relationship with the colors and just get thinking a bit more. So that's what that is. One of my students said, I showed it to one of my students, and she said, you could make one of those for all the students that take your class. And I had to giggle. I thought, yeah, maybe I will, but that might be a lot of work. We'll see.
Now,
I thought,
yeah. Now I noticed you put some black down there. So the original has black background, but you didn't put it around the birds. Were you thinking about whether that would be black in the final thing, or was it just to have some black there as a comparison?
it was just to remind myself that I'm working with black, that
Okay.
I plan to work with black. But I didn't want to, it would be too hard to have a black coming right up to the edge of the birds in the
Okay.
watercolor. So I just put a splash at the bottom there.
Yeah. Okay.
But it still looks nice with the white, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like if the black wasn't there.
Well, that's why I wondered why you just put a little splash of black on the bottom. Were you thinking of going a different direction?
Mm-hmm. No, but I talked to my needlework community about this as I go along. And my friend Kathy, she said, well, what if you had a heavy black couching at the bottom and you just kind of faded out to, a brick stitch in another color, yellow, or, a black Gutermann. I said, oh, that's an interesting idea as well. I like that idea. But I like the idea of having 3 or 4 versions, but my goodness, this takes a long time. I don't think I'm going to get there. So that was that. And then, I think the next thing I have to think about is the size. So the wonderful team over at the Crowwork Company, they have some tools that I don't have. And one of them, they must have a graphic designer on their team, and they can take a line drawing. They can take the birds, the Pietre Dure birds, and they can make a line drawing from that fairly easily. And I could have too, just it's a bit more labor intensive. So they sent it to me, but it was huge. I said, oh my God, I'll be dead before I'm going to run out of time. So that's when my photocopier comes into play. And I use this so much. It's just a little inexpensive photocopier, but I'll often have my line drawing and then I'll reduce by 50%, reduce by 55%, by 57. Like every little percentage makes quite a difference. So I'll, I'll sit there for 10, 15 minutes playing with the size, and then I have to make notes so I remember what size did I reduce that to? Because that's the perfect size, right?
Yep.
Um, so I finally ended up settling on a size where the whole dimensions will be, I'll say this in inches, about 4 inches by 7 inches. And so that's including the black border. The birds themselves are smaller than that.
Yeah.
But even that for Ornue is, that's ambitious. So that's, I've got my design, I've got the outline,
Yeah,
I've played a bit.
I was gonna ask you, so that a 4x7 piece is really on the outer edge then of what you would design for a project that someone could finish in 6 months or so with steady work.
No, they can do this in much less than six
Okay,
months.
all right.
It's just that nowadays, when you see Ornue designs coming out, they're not usually that big. They're usually a bit smaller just because they're so time consuming. But I figured that if I made the birds any smaller, then you'd lose a lot of the detail and the fun bit of playing with, there's a variety of greens in there that you can see
Yeah.
and a variety of blues. So I wanted to, give the student enough space to think about changing their threads and having fun with that as well. So, there's a balance of what's too big to, get done, and at the same time, not make it too small. But I've noticed that there are some very large projects out there. Some of the crewel work companies' crewel projects are huge, and people love doing them. I think that it's nice to have a project that is going to take you some time, so you can, again, develop a relationship with that piece and really get to spend time, mastering those threads and thinking about your color changes. And there's a fun side of not having a quick one as well.
Now, all right, dumb guy question here. The
Yeah.
Ornue technique, is there a point where it's too small and you really can't do effective, you can't get effective use of the Ornue technique, I guess? I mean,
Yeah.
it gets too small and then you just can't get it to look right?
Yeah, I mean, you would still be able to get the shape, but you wouldn't have room for much shading if it was very, very tiny.
Yeah, okay.
So the smaller you go, the harder it is to have the appropriate space for some shading. Um, yeah, so it just depends how many colors you want to use, and it also depends a lot on how thick your thread is. So when I did some sampling, as you see coming up, my thread I realized was just too heavy. Oh, okay. So before I started sampling, before I get onto that, right? So this is a picture where you can see where I'm looking at the threads that I have on hand, and that's a big picture. So that was the version that was sent to me, the outline. I said, oh, that's really too big, but I can use that for making my notes on. So I'm looking at the picture, um, the photograph of the inlay, and I'm looking at this line drawing, and I'm looking at the threads that I have, and I'm guessing. I'm saying, okay, I think this is going to be this color. I think this is going to be that color. And oh, now that color's not in stock anymore, or that color's been discontinued. What could be an alternative to that one? So here I was playing with that idea, and then making sure I had a list of this elsewhere. And you'll see there
Now,
on the
all right, so this seems like a rather involved process, and then difficult decisions about how true you want to be to the art
yeah
versus what you want to do in your mind with the colors.
yeah, and what I can get as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I mean, it wasn't that long. It was a half day perhaps of having all my spools out and looking back and forth at the picture and reminding myself that I am not dictated by the original to stick exactly to the colors that I see, because the pictures that I see on my computer screen might be quite different than if I had the actual piece in front of me.
Right.
So, uh, for many reasons, and who knows under what lighting that photo was taken as well. So you've got my computer screen, whoever took the photo, all playing a factor on what are the original colors of the semi-precious stones there. And
Right.
then I've
Well,
got my sample of stones as well in front of me, of real stones.
yeah, that was the other part of my question was that becomes a factor then too. How true do you want to be to the actual natural stone? Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh.
So in the end, I guess my designer side of me said, well, I need the thread colors to behave in a harmonious way. So if when I was kind of done doing the matching of just looking at the individual parts of the birds, if there was a spool of thread that just didn't seem to gel with the others, I adjusted. So the palette is very similar to the original picture, and they all work nicely together, but they're not exactly. And I would rather have harmony of color than to say, well, this little bit was exactly that blue, because that's not the point here.
Hmm.
The point here was to use that original piece as inspiration for an Ornuet design.
Now, as you're going through this, you're starting to build up some materials as you develop this design. Do we have a notebook that this all stays in? Is it a file folder? Do you make some
Yeah.
effort to keep it all together?
See that clipboard
Yep.
in
That's
the
it.
picture? There's now about 20 sheets of paper on that clipboard, with different bits of information. So I've got, a variety of the photocopied sizes with my notes there, and the color photo with my stone types and bird types on there. And then when I started doing my sampling, for every line that I stitched, I wrote which color threads I used. So I would remember that line 3 used, this thread and that thread, for example.
Mm.
And I've got my watercolor on there now. So I don't use a notebook that often, actually. I end up later on filing these together in like a big plastic sleeve when I'm done, because I end up having a lot of papers,
Yeah.
that I photocopy and reduce and print off things, information. So it's more like, we'll call it a folder rather than a notebook.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so then you can see I was starting to choose my threads there. And if just on the right, yeah, there you go. And in the end, this is what I came up with, and I think they look very nice together. And there are a lot of colors. There's blues, there's greens, and there's reds. We'll call it, those big basic colors. Um, but the different, tints and shades of them, I think work well together. Well, that's my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Another stitcher might think, well, I don't really like how those go together. But when I looked at the original picture, and what worked as a whole of threads, I thought, this is it. This is the winner. So these are from Piper's Silks. They're a silk company based in the UK, and they sell these small reels. And then you can see that at the top there's one big black one, and that's a reel of silk as well. So these are all flat silk, so there's no twist to them. And the black one is about twice the weight of all the other little spools, which means that when I use it to stitch, it'll cover faster. So the black one is from the Japanese Embroidery Center.
Okay.
So students will work with a heavier weight silk, and it still spreads nice and flat, but it has more, we'll call them filaments per strand than the Pipers.
Okay. Now, you have them all sitting in a little basket tray, whatever,
Yeah,
on a white cloth. Do we also look at them on a black cloth, or
I did. Yep,
okay,
absolutely. They were all laid out on a black silk. So this is just like a rough wooden tray. So I just put a soft liner on the inside so they don't catch on anything.
okay,
So they were all laid out on the black silk that I'm going to be using,
yep.
because you need to know how they're going to interact with the black, right?
Well, yeah, that was what I wondered. Deb DeCrane, Piper Silk, and then, yeah, that black is Japanese. Yep.
Yeah, it's from the Japanese Embroidery Center in the US.
So, okay.
So then you can see I'm starting to sample. So my I needed to make a sample because I wanted to know, am I going to use black passing thread or am I going to use gold or gilt um, passing thread? So I needed to make 2 rectangles and I just wanted to try out the colors of all the silks that I had on the black passing and all the colors that I had on the gilt passing. And I wanted to try and kind of generally kind of keep the blobs of color the same on the 2 samples. So here I'm starting with the passing and I'm thinking this looks really neat. And it's not a dark, dark, dark black. It's like a shiny, people might call it gunmetal black. So it has a very interesting reflective quality. It's not at all matte.
So that's it here,
And
over here on the right, lower
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I'm building it up and I'm thinking, this is so beautiful. For sure, this is the one that I'm going to use. And I don't know if you have another progress picture. Right. And it's coming along and it's still looking, I think, very good. And I'm convinced myself I don't even need to do the gold. I'm sure that this is going to be the winner, but I carry on. And then you can see on the other side, beside it, I have the gold version. So it's a bit more labor intensive because I need to cover the gold with quite a bit of black to kind of, mimic the original piece. But in the end, I said, wow, the bird can really play on the gold of the passing and build that in to the overall look. Whereas if I use black passing, I really need to put a lot of yellow and orange to make up for the black that I'm going to have to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So I hummed and hawed, which one's the right one? And because I had such a hard time deciding, I realized that means that they would both work. They would both be fine. And I put it out to my my stitching community, my alumni students, and most of them said that they prefer the gold in the end over the black. And I thought to myself, what a valuable experience. I mean, to do the sample, it was almost a week, the 2 samples. But it was very worth my time because in my head, I was saying, it's got to be black. I'm going to use the black passing. But in the end, the gold looks pretty amazing too. What do you gravitate to?
The gold.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Without
You too,
hesitation.
Jennifer?
Yep.
Yeah.
What does the audience
the
say?
golds.
I don't know, folks. Put your votes in. Yeah. No, I without hesitation for
It'll take a
me.
few seconds for it to catch up.
Right.
Yeah. I won't say what I'm going with or what my plan is.
Well, while they're doing that, I think I have the video of the 2 samples next. Should we show that?
Oh, yes. Did I make a video?
Yes,
Oh,
you did.
oh yeah, I did.
Here, I'll.
Here's the samples side by side, the black and the gold. And I'll try and get them to sparkle a little bit, different angles. Both look beautiful in the end.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I
It's like
forgot I sent that to you.
Gold, 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 gold.
Looks like gold's overwhelming. Yep.
But I have a funny thing to say though is that as I was stitching this and showing this to my peer group, they're all saying, "Oh, that black is just amazing. That's gonna be it. It's wonderful." But because I took the time to still go ahead with the gold sample, that's the one that ended up being the winner, and that's the one I'm starting to stitch up. But that being said, I think that a black version would look so cool as well. It's not traditional. So one of my previous students, she's tested kits for me before. So I've asked her just to stitch like a little bit, like maybe one band of, 1 inch of of where the birds are in black.
Hmm.
And so she's kindly offered to do that. And that it'll just be fun to have that as a sample as well to show students, what could be done, what are some alternatives.
Yeah.
So, and then I had to,
Yeah. See, and
order all the silks new.
this
What's
shot
that?
of this shot of the samples here, I think, really shows. It shows
Mhm.
more. See, the black's got more life in this shot than
Yeah.
Yeah.
than it does in that one.
Yeah. Yeah, the angle makes such a difference.
Yeah.
How the light is shining on it, as with all metal threads, right? And stone too, to
Right.
your point, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So now I need to wait for all new silks to arrive, oh, right. Because when I start stitching, I want to start with full spools, so I make sure that the student isn't going to run out. If I start stitching with a half spool, it's nice for me to start off with the same amount that the students are going to have. So
Yeah.
hopefully those will come in the next few days. And in the meantime, as you said, I've already figured out my size. And if you go to the next picture, you can see there that this is the design transfer. So there's a variety of ways you can transfer your design. But for this one on black silk, I like to use a light box actually quite often. But this one on black silk, I thought it's very small, little details, and I wanted to capture all the details in the design transfer. I decided to use this method where I just have the line drawing on a piece of paper and I backstitch, very small back stitches all over the whole design. And then I can tear away the paper. And then it's transferred beautifully, very crisp, clear. So that's what I got up to a couple of days ago over the weekend.
Okay, we have that video too here. We can.
I wish I could actually stitch this fast. So you can see I'm starting to tear it away, and I'm using this very sharp laying tool called the Teckleberry. It's perfect for tearing away all that paper and for laying all the silk. So afterwards, I went and I just, with a gel pen, a gold archival gel pen, I just kind of went over the back stitching just to make it a bit easier on my poor eyes to see. And then I had to determine the border that's going to go around that. And you might say, well, where's the insect, Natalie? How come the insect is not on there? And that's because I decided in the end, there you go, that I wanted to do a little nod to Margaret Nicholson, a very celebrated English embroiderer who was renowned for the work she did in Ornue in the 1900s. She would do big Ornue projects and put all kinds of fun found objects, accessories, swirls of metal thread on top. So I thought, well, maybe we can do that. We can do an interesting object on top, attached, with some clear metal thread, a little brass insect. And perhaps on the branch, we'll do something funky too. I don't know yet. I'm still thinking about that because I've got about 200 hours of stitching ahead of me to think about that part while I'm stitching. So I quite like this size of this one is about the same size as the original insect. You can see it's quite small there. And he's nicely made. So this is one that I ordered 4 different kinds of insects. They call them insect charms or just little insects. Found this one. And then go to the next one, Gary. So this one, you can't really tell, but it's a Swarovski crystal of a scarab. There you go. And it's quite beautiful too. And it comes in a variety of colors. They have ones that are like green, which would be more true to the scarab color, I guess. And I've got a fly coming in brass as well. And then another student friend helped me find these, and even found a site that sells real insects. I'm like, okay, that's a bit odd, but I'm going to give that a go. So I'll play when it's done. I'll place them on top, and we'll decide which one looks the best. But it's nice to have a few to choose from.
So this part is still a work in progress, and as you're stitching it, then you'll have these different things you can just drop on there and see what you like.
Yeah, and what am I going to do to finish it? What am I going to put around the border? What kind of insect am I going to use? Am I going to play with the branch in any way? And then if you go to the last photo, that's where I'm at today, because I'm waiting for my silk threads to arrive. So I can just kind of get my first row down. And that first row is really important because it kind of sets the angle for all the next few rows, well, many rows that are going to go above it. So I'm trying to work really hard to make sure that's nice and straight, so I have a good beginning. And I'm not covering the gold completely, because I want to let the gold shine through a little bit, to have a little something special when you look at it from different angles.
I can see how much thicker this black is than it's when you get it off the spool, it's quite.
Yeah. So at least that will cover faster for the students. I mean, I could have given them a black piper silk, but I think that they would never want to take a class from me again if I just gave them the black pipers.
So is this an in-person class? Sharon was asking.
Oh, right. Well, so the latest thought is that this will be an in-person class in October in Scotland, on one of the crewel work company. They offer retreats, residential retreats, full tuition, board, two instructors, and also all your materials and museum tours, etc. So this is one of the two designs that is proposed to be taught at that festival in October this year.
Oh, and then do you get to stay in a castle?
Well, close to a castle. Close to one. A very nice accommodation, great accommodation and food. And, it's right in the town of St. Andrews. So I don't know if you know where that is, but it's right on the coast of Scotland. It's a historic university town. It's beautiful. Not too far from Edinburgh. Anybody who's a golfer will know where that is. So that's the tentative plan, and maybe online for one of their online festivals next year too. We're talking about that as well. But you know what? We don't have a name for this piece yet. And I thought we could pull from your audience there, Gary, that perhaps some of them might be able to come up with a name, a suggestion. We have a few. Do you want me to say what we've got so far?
Sure.
So
here,
we've got.
Let me jump to the
full image.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what we've come up with so far is the one that got away. And notice I said one, the one that got away. How about stone to silk, hand embroidered pietra dura, semi-precious beauty, birds of a feather. That's all we've got so far. Any thoughts?
I'll have to.
I don't know. My initial reaction was to go with the Pietra Duri, just call it that, just because because nobody'd know what that means.
That's
right.
True. And then it would make them look it up, and then they'd see that it's stonework, but that you're doing it embroidery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, okay.
Right. And so my stitching peer that came up with that, she said to call it hand embroidered pietra dure. What do you think of that? Or is that too long?
Too long.
Too long. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if anybody in the audience comes up with something, please put put it in the chat, and we'll
Yeah.
put it in the running for consideration.
That's interesting. Yeah. See what are Pietra and Dura? What does each of those words alone stand for or mean? Do you know?
I think it means hard stone. Um,
Yeah, isn't Pietra stone and Dura means strong or hard?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think it means like very roughly from the Italian of hard stone. There might be somebody out there who's Italian.
Because see, I would
I
find
do.
Yeah.
I would find the word for thread and call it Pietra, and then whatever the word for thread is.
Oh, okay, stone thread.
Stone
Interesting.
thread. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I asked my Italian friend how to pronounce this, so I didn't sound like too much of a simpleton. Do you want to hear how it's said in Italian?
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Pietre dure.
Oh, of course.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. Pietra Dura.
I'm going to practice to see if I can sound that good by then.
Got to roll that R
Pietra
just a little
dure.
bit. Huh?
So, and I also, maybe because I'm reading a lot of comic books with my kids, I had the question to myself, if these two little birds had speech bubbles coming out of their head, what would those speech bubbles be saying? And I'm going to have to come up with a few little versions of that, I think.
Yeah, you can have some fun. Yep.
Yeah, that just gives me pleasure when once I'm about halfway done or even a quarter of the way done, I'm like, ooh, I need some motivation here. I'll start doing birds with speech bubbles just for fun.
I'll be most interested when you're done what you do with the insect, because it's to me it's interesting to have all that beautiful ornue, and then does a hard metallic, where is that thing? Does a hard metallic thing, it's hard to tell now without the stitching. But does it look out of place if you put it on there? Does the insect need to be something with thread? It'll be interesting to see as you develop this thing.
Did I send you the pictures of the Margaret Nicholson pieces that have the embellished work over top of the finished ornue? Well, there's a bottom one there. That's not Margaret Nicholson, but that's just an example of adding something on top of ornue.
Uh-huh.
That's Hazel Everett, that one there. And that's quite nice with the beads.
Yeah.
Quite big. But in the original album, there was 3 or 4 pictures from Margaret Nicholson, and I just quite like her style and the way she's modernized the ornue by adding fun stuff on top.
Yeah, I did.
And you can also give the student the choice, right?
Right.
To put or not. And
See, this one's interesting. I obviously didn't keep those in this thing here. But see, this is interesting because you have the crystals and beads, but then it ties the wings tie it into the needlework.
yeah, because it overlaps a bit, right? And
Yeah.
they're you can see through them.
It's like there's a visual connection of thread to beads. Well, and then using the beads on the border doesn't hurt either. So yes,
No.
all right. So what's your thinking? What's your thinking on the border then? Do you have thinking at this
Well,
point?
I go back to the sample, and I've just put a border of pearl number 2. Nope, not that one. The little rectangular samples.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so there and pearl number 2 is too big actually because it sits. You can't tell in this picture, but it sits proud of the embroidery actually. So I think I'll switch to size number 1. So it could be just a simple pearl border like that. We could go to something a bit more fancy. And also, I forgot to mention that the passing, maybe you can't tell, but the passing in the picture on the left, the black passing, that's a size 5, and that's the size I'm going to go with because the passing on the right is a size 7 passing, which I just thought it seemed a bit too big. It's slightly bigger, and it would not allow the students to do as much play with the color within a little shape of the bird. So I switched to a smaller size, so passing number 5.
Mm-hmm.
And the last Ornue piece I did with the 3 baubles, there were like 3 Christmas ornaments. If you remember that one, I used
Right.
passing number 4, but it was a small, and that means it's smaller. It was a smaller design. And I thought, okay, I'll at least give the students the chance to work with a passing number 5, which is slightly bigger than the baubles because it's, quite a bit bigger of a design. What are you thinking for the border, Gary? You have some thoughts?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure, and I didn't think of these as that being the border, but I can see how that works. But now, I want to see the black border on the left around the gold.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that could look very nice as well. Swap them around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that your doesn't visually take away from the art,
Yeah.
but it defines an edge.
That being said, I don't know if you can see, like particularly in the gold, it stands out quite well. It's easier to see on the gold side that a lot of times when I'm doing my Ornue pieces, I just don't put any border, and I teach the students how to make those nice, tight, equal turns the whole way up there.
Yeah.
So they don't actually need a border, and they could show off, their ability to make nice, tight turns. So this is one long, continuous thread here. Well, it's actually a pair of threads continuously back and forth and back and forth. So they're not having to sync them at the end of every row,
Mm-hmm.
or at the end of every 2 rows. So that's a good skill that we'll spend like a half day on.
Yeah.
How to do that so you don't have that everybody hates syncing and tying off threads to the back.
I did. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about a bit. Where is that? Here, this really shows. You've talked about several times about the angle that your needle goes into the ground cloth,
Yeah.
and that really shows getting it underneath so it wraps the passing.
Yeah. And this passing thread is not like a Japanese thread that looks similar. A Japanese thread is quite soft. And if you hug it too intensely while you're couching, it almost like leaves a little indent. But passing is a much firmer thread and doesn't indent as much. So I do teach the students to put their needle on an angle and also come out on an angle a bit from underneath the thread, the gold thread there. It just gets your stitch in nice and close, and it's going to make sure that the gilt or gold passing thread is not going to move anywhere. It's going to stay where you want it to stay.
Yeah. Talk about that needle. That's a different eye than we're used to with tapestry and.
You have a good eye, Gary. I wondered if students would spot that. So that's a special needle. That's a Japanese embroidery needle, and it has quite a thick, strong base, like the shaft. And then the eye flattens out and is round, not oval. The eye gets quite flat so that the silk thread, as you're coming in and out of the fabric, doesn't get as much wear. It doesn't rub on the fabric as much because the hole is made by the thicker shaft. And then you've got a thin eye, and then your thread can kind of, stay flat against that eye as it comes through the bigger hole created by the shaft of the needle. And it's a nice round eye so that when you come up again and you are ready to kind of lay the silk down, the roundness of the eye doesn't squish it all together. So this is quite a special needle. And it's short. It's much shorter than the standard crewel needles that you would be using, like a crewel size 10. So for the when we're working with the Piper's silks, we're definitely just going to use regular, crewel size 10, or for the really daring, they might go to a crewel size 12, but I say quill size 10 is fine. But sometimes when you're working with quite a lot of silk thread that you need to lay down with your laying tool, it's nice to have a Japanese needle. But some people don't like them. They find they're clunky and they're too short, and it depends what you're used to working with. But when I have these thicker flat silks, I like to use a Japanese needle. That's what it's
Oh,
made
so
for.
this is not your everyday needle then. This work it is selected for this type of silk.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you're putting, it looks like, oops, wrong mouse. It looks like this is the thread is quite fibrous and loose, which suggests to me that you have to do some laying to get it to lay flat, or no?
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this flat silk. It's lots of individual filaments. We're going to say 12 little strands. I didn't actually count them, but something like 12 strands and the strands, they call them suga, in one, the part that you take off the spool. It's 12 very fine filaments all together, but not twisted together, so that when you stitch them, you use your laying tool and you could spread them nice and flat, and that makes them very shiny
Okay.
and have very good coverage as well.
Okay, but so then, all right, so that's interesting to me. But then when you go to the Piper silk, then
Yeah.
that's twisted more like we're used to.
It's not twisted at all.
Oh
It's
no?
flat as
Okay.
well, but it
Okay.
has much fewer suga. So it's probably half the number of filaments in the Piper silk than in the Japanese silk.
Okay.
So with that in mind, they can, in their needle, they could put two greens, for example. When they get to some of the more complex green area, they could put two different types of greens in their needle if they wanted to. You can play with a bit more shading because it's so fine.
Yeah. Oh, here I think you can see the flatness here.
Yeah. And you can see that, the real shine on them, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The shine. That comes through in spades. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just shiny. It almost looks metallic.
Yeah. And I'll have, anybody who hasn't worked with these before, they do find them a bit tricky at first because your hands need to be like soft like a baby's bum. Because all those little filaments, they're going to find every little crevice in the skin on your hands and in your nails. So
I'd be a
I,
disaster. I'd be an
yeah,
absolute disaster.
yeah, it takes some time to get used to. I actually keep, like there's these almost like a pumice stone, but not a pumice stone, something like that on my stitching table. And if I get any little burr on my skin, that little thing comes out and I rub my skin and I get rid of it. Otherwise, it is a disaster.
Mm.
So I tell my students it's like an excuse to give yourself the best ever home manicure or treat yourself to one, because you need to have like really, really good hands, soft, smooth skin before working with these silks.
Yeah.
So treat yourself.
A lot of these spools, a lot of silk on them because it's so flat.
Well,
And of
you
course, a
can,
lot
I
is
think,
relative, but I mean, it just
yeah, I mean, the black one, the Japanese spools, I believe it's 60 meters. They come in 60 meters on there.
hmm
The Pipers, I can't remember how big they are. Maybe 50? I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, so that's a
Oh,
lot
wait,
then.
it probably says right on my spool. Let me just pick one up here,
Oh,
right
that's just
beside me.
crazy. Keep guessing. Keep guessing. No, don't look.
Okay, oh, I have the answer. I got one in my hand. What's your guess?
30 meters.
It's 80.
Oh,
Wow.
oh, there's an 80 one there. See, I was cheating. I was going by this one here that says 30, but here's a 80
Yeah,
there.
because I had asked for a sample, and sometimes if you're a designer, you can ask them for samples of smaller cups, but the standard is 80.
So 80 meters, that's 240, 50 feet. Wow.
That's some good fast math there, Gary. Well done.
Thank you very much.
So Deb has a question. She wonders why you don't use the Japanese silk and divide it.
Right. Cost. The Japanese silk is quite a lot more than the Piper silk.
Okay.
And I could divide it, but sometimes when you're dividing it, so you can, it's a good question. You can take the thicker Japanese and separate it, but that's kind of a lot of work. You do that more often if you're going to be twisting it together with other colors, or you want to make
Okay.
a very thin couching thread. Because sometimes when you separate them, some of the suga they break apart. But this would be like to have 16 colors of the Japanese reels would be very, very expensive.
Oh,
You're
okay.
looking at, maybe, I mean, very expensive is relative, right? But you're looking at about $9 US per reel for the Japanese silks.
That's plenty. That's plenty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to other threads that you could use. The Piper silks in US dollars, I think they're maybe around $2 per.
Oh.
Oh, wow. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
$2
So,
for
that
that much
factors in
thread?
too. I want to make sure my students can manage this, right?
Yeah, but $2 for that much thread, that is spectacular. I'd pay that all day long. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah, I do factor that in when I'm choosing the threads for my students. That being said, you don't have to use silk. I have Ornue. Traditionally, silk is the material to use, but my baubles I did there, that's with just DMC thread as well. So you don't
Yeah.
have to use Pipers. The thing with DMC is because it's a round thread, compared to this that's a flat thread. It takes up more space between the rows.
Mm-hmm.
As you're couching, so you can't get your rows quite as tight, but that's not necessarily essential to have them kind of glued together either. If you look at, historic samples, many of the rows are not like glued together. They look like they're glued together.
Oh, I see how that can be a factor, yeah.
So you see the rows are pretty close there, and if you imagine if I was using a round thread, that they just would need to be a teeny bit further apart.
Yep. So you get a
Especially
tighter
where you
look.
have a lot of heavy couching, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I think this will be a fun one to teach.
Yep.
It's proposed as a three-day class, which leaves lots of time for the students to make progress, but to learn how to work with the flat silks, which
Putting
is
everybody
very
back on
different if you
screen here. Yeah.
haven't done that before. And learn how to do the turns and learn how to perfect your couching stitch and make color decisions as you're going along. So I think it will be a really interesting class.
Now, if I were to take this class? Can I just walk in cold with zero experience, or is this something where you at least need to have done some Ornue ahead of time to
No,
really?
I don't think you need to have experience in Ornue, but what I always tell my students is that, in a class, we'll say there's 15 because the class is capped at 15. There's going to be a huge range of abilities, and, not to think that your piece is going to look exactly like mine
Mm-hmm.
in the first day, right? To like give yourself a break and know that if you're new to couching, well, what you're going to focus on is your nice couching stitches and getting your rows nice and straight. And someone who's already worked with these kinds of silks before and has done some couching, they can probably zoom along much faster and perhaps, put their energy into thinking about how they want to do the shading.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I mean, because it's such a small class and it's 3 days, I really have the time to get around to everybody and help those that are struggling in different areas, because everybody will have their challenge. I just need
Yeah.
to find out what that is and help them overcome it.
Standard class. Everybody's different. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
All right, Natalie, that was fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's really fun to talk through the process with someone, and I'll let you know how things go.
Yeah.
How long does it take to do one row once I get to all the colors?
Yeah. Follow Natalie on Instagram to keep up with that as we see it develop. I'm sure that we'll see photos. Yep. Okay, I think we're going to call it there. Email right away if you want in on the drawings for the stuff tonight. Send it right away because I'll do the drawing here in the next 10 minutes. So send that right away. Natalie, always a treat. Really appreciate the time and the insights, and so much fun to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. And you know what I'll do once I get off? I'll go on to the YouTube page and I'll put a link to the where they can express their interest if anybody's interested in taking the class. I'll put a link
Okay.
to that as well
All right, very good.
in the chat. Thank
All right.
you.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you
Bye
next
bye.
week. Bye.